As day dawns on the westerly edge of Britain, one of the most extraordinary places in the country starts to come alive. At first sight, the Eden project looks as though it really belongs on a far distant planet, a space station on the edge of the galaxy. But in reality, it's one of the most spectacular gardens on Earth. Eden is home to the world's largest conservatory. It's become the most popular paid-for visitor attraction outside the M25 and has generated £500 million for both the local and national economies. All this in just 4 years. Eden's the kind of garden where they plant 300,000 bulbs on a roof.
We're really lucky here in that we can try really new stuff almost without it being unusual, because everything is so new.
And another 700,000 in the ground, all by hand.
Even though I grow all this stuff here, I've still got a veg garden at home. I do go home and I do potter around my own vegetable garden without anybody looking at me.
Eden boasts that it has the biggest jungle in captivity, a flight of fancy that gets down to basics as you find out what plants can really do.
This is called Indian mulberry. If you can't go for a poo, they make you eat this, and it works really, really quickly.
In this caged rainforest, the gardeners of Eden have also learnt to expect the unexpected.
John, I'm going to try and swing you back now.
And to delve into the mysterious and the exotic.
Why it has to be done in the middle of the night, I really don't know. I guess it's the magic hour in the middle of the forest.
We've spent an eventful year with the gardeners of Eden, folk who've created their own piece of paradise out of a sterile clay pit. Less than a decade ago, this was just a vast hole in the ground, a worked-out china clay pit devoid of life. The chief executive of this impossible project, and one of its founding fathers, is Tim Smith.
We had a sense that technologically we could build fantastic things. We had a feeling that horticulturally we had the talents, if anybody could do it, to do it. And I guess rather arrogantly, I never doubted for a moment that if the first two things were correct, the public would love it.
10,000 or more people might come to Eden every day. When it was first conceived as one of the most ambitious Millennium projects, the highest estimate of visitor numbers was 750,000 a year. In 2001, the first full year of operation, more than double that number showed up. As people look down from the observation deck, they see laid before them 35 acres of outdoor garden and 2 enormous bubble-wrapped conservatories, the biomes. In the humid tropics biome, which is big enough to hold the Tower of London, there are more than 1,000 varieties of plant in a super hot 100-degree environment. Next door, the warm temperate biome recreates a seductive world of olives, citrus and vines. Something about Eden seems to have captured the nation's imagination. Perhaps it's the bare-faced cheek of the project.
I love it.
It was fun.
Very nice.
It just makes you aware of what a wonderful place that we live in.
It's just I am in another world, you know, because this thing is magic for me, because I did never see something like this.
We knew that it had to be iconic, full stop. It had to become a global must-see. The original brief was this thing about Wow Factor 11, sex on a stick, go, with a little bit about Picasso meets the Aztecs thrown in. And all of that kind of hyperbole of those early years is coming to roost now. And I think thrilling is an overused word, but I find it really thrilling because in those early years there was a feeling of it maybe being insubstantial. It could get washed away. You know, the cliff faces were fragile and everything. And now you get a feeling as if everything is in place. It is a home, it's not a temporary settlement anymore.
One of the biggest challenges for Eden's gardeners has been to create a fertile environment out of a lifeless mix of sand and clay. When Darren Tops, one of the outdoor supervisors, started here, the task looked impossible.
When I initially got here and first started doing some planting, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was digging holes and thinking, you can't put plants into this stuff. I mean, it's just awful. It goes against the grain of all your training, really, that, you know, you should have this nice sort of friable loam full of organic material, and, you know, you're digging and planting these into this sort of sloppy clay, really. So initially it was a bit of a shock, but it just adds to the wow factor of the place and the amazement that, you know, just 4 years ago it was a inert pit, and, you know, you can create this sort of living space, really.
Eden's been compared to a giant plant pot filled with entirely artificial compost, a plant pot the size of 35 football pitches. And in keeping with Eden's sustainable approach to life, much of this man-made soil is made up of the green waste from the city of Plymouth. Who would have thought that such magnificent vegetables could be grown in these conditions? Kevin Austin, who supervises the Cornish crops area, is understandably proud of the quality of the produce he manages to cram into his 2-acre plot.
They're just how healthy, look, they're just beautiful, healthy plants, aren't they?
Yeah, they're completely organic, apart from the green waste that we put in that comes from the council. But we've had no artificial fertilisers or sprays on those. We're using bacterium for the cabbage white butterfly. Ah. So hence they're looking healthy. You haven't got all the holes in that.
Exactly. Mine are full of holes.
Yeah, you need some BT.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Jill Cartwright's been with the Eden Project since the beginning, and is only too aware of what a struggle it's been.
We'd planned to slope up, and then we'd come the next morning and it would have all slipped down because the soil would get so waterlogged and it would get so heavy, it would just slump. It was a real battle, and I don't think that we ever imagined that we'd ever be able to grow things like this in it, that's for sure. We have spent the last 4 years digging in huge amounts of organic matter, and that has really, really helped. Veg garden soil's now quite rich and quite good, but we have to keep on adding. And occasionally you think, surely added enough, but then you'll dig it over and you'll come to quite a solid pan.
Well, that's the first crop of onions grown at Eden.
It's midsummer at the Eden Project, and things are growing fast. But in the humid tropics biome, some of the plants have become a little over-enthusiastic. When it comes to pruning trees in the biggest conservatory in the world, Eden calls up its abseiling gardeners. Although the growth in the biome certainly looks impressive, all is not quite what it seems. The larger trees can become unstable as they race towards the light. Their roots haven't developed well in the thin, artificial soil. Their branches have become top-heavy.
You can never tell till you get up here what it's going to be like, and usually it turns out to be twice as complicated as you expected. Because of the environment. Of course, the pressure's on because we've got to be out by 10.
Risky jobs like this one must be done in the early morning before the public arrive. Already some of these top-heavy trees have fallen, mostly when the temperature drops at night. But one day, disaster might occur when the biome is full of visitors. It's essential then that the pruning team find a safe way of getting to the big balsa tree, which is already starting to lean. It's a strenuous traverse along one of the main beams of the biome. John Lewin's extra weight could put the support joints under severe pressure, forcing a pin to fly out and leaving John dangling above the jungle.
We have to limit the risk as much as we can. There's always an element of risk in what you're doing because you never know. You know, the long shot is equipment could fail, but we test and we change equipment regularly, and we try and rule out any unforeseen accidents. That's why it takes such a long time to get anywhere, because you have to take it slow. You want to be sort of centre of the trees that you want to come down from?
Yeah, sort of dead centre, really.
Don't say dead. I'm hoping the rope bag's going to drop right through the tree.
John Lewin drops down a line for his colleague with the pruning saw, John Nichol. As John pulls himself up the jungle tree, it's easy to forget that you're inside a giant greenhouse.
I'd always imagined jungle-ness and big domes, but the reality of it, the sheer diversity of plant types and the fabulous chaos, really, of the way they all work together is ravishing. That's the word I'd use, ravishing, because I never thought that we would be able to achieve a sense of being in nature, even as an artistic statement. And what I think has been so clever and such an achievement for the horticultural team has been to know when to be covert gardeners and when to leave well alone, to create a sense that this is a place that could trick you very easily into getting a sense of something much, much older.
Watch out below!
Hey!
When I was in Ecuador last year, I was really struck by how well the team here had done, because we always set out with this ambition of making it feel as if you had a sense of rainforest-ness.
Watch out!
Which isn't ordered and planted two of a kind. It is vaguely chaotic, and it has its own beauty and its own rhythm, and I think they've done a really terrific job here. Terrific job under unbelievable circumstances.
Watch out below!
When you bear in mind that every grain of soil here was artificial and they've grown in it. I mean, we didn't just say create a fabulous paradise of plants. We said try growing in a material no one's ever grown in before.
While John Nichol plays Tarzan in the tree canopy, the biome supervisor, Dina Gallick, involves herself in an altogether more delicate operation, transplanting rice on the upper slopes of the biome. Rice, bananas, coffee, cocoa, they're all grown here. One of Eden's big ideas is to show plants that are useful as well as beautiful. Crops that tell a story about the relationship between plants and people.
I want this to look as close to real rainforest as possible, and that to me has always been the dream of underglass tropical houses. I mean, I love wild. I think when you go into somewhere and it's all manicured and pristine clean, it just does nothing for me. Because things are big. Plants are big. What's it they say? The size matters? Definitely.
With just half an hour until the public arrive, John Nichol suddenly finds himself adrift.
Oh dear. I've sort of come away from the tree. Could you sort of swing us back in or something?
John, I'm going to try and swing you back now.
I'm the king of the swingers, jungle VIP.
Jesus! Come on! Hey!
By 5 minutes to 10, John has pruned enough of the tree to make it safe. Result.
Hi, Andy. I think we're okay to open.
Okay, I'll let the doors open on that one then.
While the biome fills up, John can have a much-needed tea break. But that's the only relaxation he'll be getting this morning. Within the hour, he takes centre stage, up to his ankles in mud, as he cleans the pond at the foot of the waterfall. No more privacy for him. Everything here, inside the biomes or outside in the pit, is designed not just to catch the eye, but to encourage people to gain a new awareness and appreciation of the living world around them and the wealth of its produce.
The most stimulating thing there is to excite somebody to be interested. if you can touch things, smell things, you know, puzzle and converse about them, people will remember it far more than if it's something on a flat screen. What we're trying to say here is about science is the first and vital element of science is actually shared by all of us, which is the power of observation. And if you can actually observe and begin by observing, you suddenly realize that it will reveal truths to you that you never thought before.
The gardeners of Eden spend a life in the spotlight in this theatre of plants. It's certainly no place for the shy and retiring.
This is Freddie. He's hand-reared, so he is used to people.
Like John, Jill Malpass is a gardener in the tropical biome, but what she really likes to be is a performer with a mission. She introduces visitors to some of the creatures that enrich the rainforest and tries to induce in her audience the wide-eyed enthusiasm she feels about the entire jungle environment, plants and animals.
He's not quite fully grown yet. It's a pink-toed tarantula from the rainforest, and it's a tree dweller. Also have a look at the orangey red part. That's the mouth part, and it's also the fangs. Can you see his mouth, the orange part? Little one, can you see? His mouth. Can you all see? All right, I'm going to put him to bed now because he's tired.
The kitchen garden's at one of the busiest points on the Eden site, but Jill, who tends it so lovingly, isn't, well, entirely at ease, perhaps, with her extra role as a communicator.
The colder the days get, the darker this one goes, but we hear it's still quite warm.
It's definitely darker.
Oh, yeah, probably, yeah. There are quite a lot of different varieties.
This is very pretty.
Yes, thanks. If I'm very busy and I'm being asked questions all the time and all I want to do is get on, it can be very frustrating. But I've now learnt to keep my head down, my eyes firmly to the ground. Sometimes, I must admit, pretend I'm deaf.
Yet she still has a strong message for the visitors, even though it's one she prefers to show rather than tell. The message? That a kitchen garden can be as beautiful as any show of flowers.
I've got a real passion for vegetables, not only because I really, really enjoy eating them at the end of the day, but I find them really, really beautiful to grow. And they're so diverse. There are so many different shapes and textures and colours. And if I were to choose between a flower border and a vegetable garden, I'd most definitely have a vegetable garden. Even though I grow all this stuff here, I've still got a veg garden at home. I do go home and I do potter around my own vegetable garden without anybody looking at me, which is great.
With the end of summer, it's even more likely to rain than usual. But the public come to Eden, whatever the weather. When the deluge comes, many families flee the beaches on the assumption that most of Eden is covered. They soon discover that most of it is not. When the rain eventually stops, the Eden gardeners can get back to one of the main jobs of the early autumn, cutting and clearing in preparation for next year.
It's probably one of the busiest times. Tend to find sort of the latter of the summer months is the easy time. It's just a bit of watering, a bit of weeding, a bit of deadheading. So there's a lot of bulb planting. Areas here, we've got a lot of dahlias to lift.
Darren's dahlias should really be cut and lifted now. All the recent rain has meant they're getting past their best. But Darren's hanging on for as long as he can. For him, even dahlias at the end of the season put on a fabulous show.
You've got moonfire here, which is it's quite dramatic because you've got the dark foliage and the lovely sort of yellow and red scented flower. And Bishop of Llandaff as well, which is a very popular one. Again, dark foliage, fantastic red bloom. And then to the other extreme, you got plants like Boogie Woogie, which is this one here, which is, I mean, they're just complete tarts, really. And a lot of people have a lot of snobby attitudes towards dahlias. I mean, they're really seen as an old granny's plant, really. But it's amazing. You start working with them and you do get attached to certain ones. I mean, there's a dahlia for every occasion. They're fantastic plants, really. You often hear them walking past, oh, I can't stand dahlias, and you catch them a bit later on, sort of stop admiring one bloom secretly.
Of course, Glenn Leishman, who supervises the warm temperate biome, has no problems about the rain damaging his plants. Today, his frustrations come from another direction, an infestation of cables in the undergrowth.
This bit of cable here we can bury underneath a lot of the bark mulch, so that doesn't have to go too deep. But where it heads out, in front of the public there, we might have to do a better burying job.
The temperate biome isn't just a great conservatory, it's also increasingly being used as a performance space. And the Eden creative team are naturally keen that they have the very best sound and lighting. This can lead to a conflict of interests.
I'd like to be doing some horticulture. I'd like to be doing something else, but this has got to be done. We can bury all these cables this time, but you know what's happening next? Who knows? There's a lot of ideas in this place, you know, a lot of great ideas, but a lot of them, they're all fighting for the same space. I don't like standing on plants when you don't have to either. It's all this compaction of root systems, which is not good for them, especially some of these smaller plants. It's tough being a plant at the Eden Project.
Before his commitment to spectacular horticulture, Eden's chief executive Tim Smith was a music producer, and he's never lost his show business instincts. He sees the biomes as performance venues which offer total immersion. The shapes and fragrance of the plants, the great canopies of reflected light. No doubt about it, in the biomes after dark, there's a magical mood. But at night, disturbing events can occur. Vulnerable trees can come crashing down. Last night, it was an inga tree in the humid tropics biome.
That's going to weigh a ton.
Dina and her team have the pressing job of clearing away the debris, but she's learnt to be philosophical about falling trees.
Craig's initiation to fall in the waterfall.
Yeah, be careful.
No, we'd hate to see anything happen to you.
Oh,
be gutted. We try and flatten at least 10 members of the public a day, whether it's by buggy or falling trees. Right. We didn't get the chainsaw out, so we're doing it the hard way. There's quite a few factors that affect these trees coming over. But we are always looking for signs. And sometimes you can see root disturbance, soil disturbance, and they start to lean a little bit. But this one was a surprise, because there were no signs to say it was leaning.
At least the fallen tree has left behind a sapling, a promise of a more stable future.
The next stage of our future developments, all of these trees will have to come out, and we'll replant with smaller trees, which is what you do now in horticulture. You plant smaller trees so they can establish well. Of course, that's long-term, and we won't see them as nice big specimens, but this is what happens. You want something to look great for opening, and you put big trees in. And there's nothing wrong with that, but yeah, except when this happens, but they do have to come out.
Yet there's one man at Eden who'd be glad to have such practical problems of his own, the curator of the dry tropics biome. For now, this is it, a shed where Ian Martin is biding his time.
It's still in my imagination and other people's, I trust. It was always part of the plan, and that's why I came on board in 1996. That was my biome, and of course I'm still waiting for it to take shape, and I'm assured by all, I'm sure sincerely, that one day we'll have our biome and we shall then advertise it widely and hopefully get a lot of people to come and see.
Ian has an embryonic dry tropics collection at the nursery, but until the funds for his biome come through, he'll have to be patient.
Cacti, of course, are a specialisation unto themselves, but I can appreciate the sheer variety of shape, colour, form, the patterns. This is a weedy species of a tree, very attractive, except it's not appreciated in some countries because it's becoming invasive. You can't get away from the fact that it's still got an attractive flower and fruit. Mickey Mouse bush, or tree as it's called, because it's a little bit like Mickey Mouse with its face and two black ears protruding. We've always kept it as one of the next phases. It's still a next phase.
He's a stoical man, this Ian Martin. Many others would be bitter by now.
I don't think that's very helpful. I mean, I can get bitter like anybody else, but hopefully by the afternoon it's all washed over, you know, because otherwise why am I here? Yeah, not very helpful.
We will build it. I mean, we deliberately backed off trying to raise the money for it because we realised that intellectually we were going to be completely exhausted if we tried to do everything at once. So the education building, which came in advance of it, we want it to be the most exciting building of its kind in the world. When we finish that, we want the dry tropic biome to be the most exciting building in the world of its kind. And you can't do two things at once. It's like working on two brilliant hit singles. You can't put all your best ideas at the same time into two things. You've got to then put them all into the one thing, and then when you finish that and you go, yes, you then move on to the second thing.
As the year draws on at Eden, you get the full impact of autumn colour, but you also get extras. The vines in the temperate biome snake their way through the sculptor Tim Shaw's evocation of a mythical wine-fuelled ritual. Outside, the big summer crowds are long gone, with only a select few enjoying the golden glow of shortening days and having Eden to themselves. The gardeners of Eden, though, have little chance to savour the mellow mood. A truckload of bulbs arrives from the tulip fields of Holland. The first consignment of the hundreds of thousands of bulbs that will be planted over the next 8 weeks. That's 8 weeks of remorseless labour. But the reward will come in the spring, when 1 million flowers bloom. The Bulb Mania season is one of Eden's most ambitious gardening events. Tom Key, the curator of the outdoor areas, supervises this grand project. That means he's the one who doesn't have to get on his hands and knees.
It's certainly a chore. It's 6 to 8 weeks, hard work for the team. It is a tough period, but I think it's well worth it. There are some wonderful machines that will plant bulbs, but I'm just a mean bastard and like to do stuff. No, but the problem is they all work on probably because they've been designed by the Dutch, they only work on flat land, and the great difficulty of Eden is obviously if we have so many slopes, the bulbs have to be planted, and the only way is to physically do it, is to get on their hands and knees or bend their back and plant them.
As part of the Bulb Mania operation, 15 tons of compost are dumped on the roof of the building that links the biomes. Fiona Sanders and her team are attempting to create a breathtaking river of blue flowers that'll be seen from all over the site.
There's no soil as such on the roof here. It's like a polystyrene layer with a only sort of 2 or 3 centimetres of of any type of soil. It's no good for bulbs, so this is a bit of an experiment, which should work. I mean, they're small bulbs, they're shallow rooting. They don't need huge, great amounts of soil. They should root out really quickly, and they put out quite a big sort of fistful of fibrous roots, which should hold them all in place. But again, it's an experiment. If it doesn't work 100%, it's not really a problem. We kind of do this thing all the time, and it generally seems to work. And we're putting out, I think, 280,000 in 2 days. So, the numbers of bulbs that you can do like this is quite incredible, really.
While the green team continue to plant 1 million bulbs, builders move in to erect a covered arena at the heart of the constantly changing landscape. This winter, it'll contain an ice rink, but come the spring, it'll house events and exhibits intended to add extra sparkle to the bulb mania season.
Under £500,000 to light all of Cornwall.
Enter one of the Eden Project's many celebrity supporters, the designer Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen. He knows a thing or two about sparkle.
Last week, and this is
Inside one of the Bulb Mania exhibition areas, Lawrence and the in-house designer David Craddock have the task of creating a series of exhibition spaces in which visitors can immerse themselves in colour, inspired by the brilliant blooms of tulips.
Feeling of drama with the light coming through the centre and then leaving everything else to go quite dark. Where are the actual entrances? Are they the taller tracks?
This here.
That one there.
There. Over there, over there. And
Look, he's a reformed air hostess.
and
then for
I'll
manual
put the life jacket on
inflation.
as well. Don't go there. It's entirely symmetrical. We've got 5 entrances. I'm doing it again.
Yeah, I know you are.
Go on, David, go for it.
There and there.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's lights along the floor. Which you don't
Actually, lights along the floor would be quite good.
And I've made a little model here. Essentially, the experience people get when they come into this into the dome will be one of overwhelming one of colour, but also of, I think, a little intrigue and to try to find this sort of intimate space in which people can actually reflect a little bit on the preciousness of the flowers, the historical connection, and so on.
It'd be really nice if there was a real feeling of, compulsion. That we could maybe create a false perspective on those pathways, that they do diminish into a point so that they feel, you really feel as if you've been channeled. And if there's a way of breaking level as well, so that maybe you go down and then come up into it.
While Lawrence talks concepts, the green team soldiers on. Being Cornwall, it's often under adverse conditions. Meanwhile, strange goings-on in the tropics.
Oh, it's so hard to see anything, isn't it?
One thing about making an environment fertile is that you attract alien invaders. However good you quarantine, one day a couple of cockroaches might hitch a ride on an imported plant, and pretty soon you have an infestation. So a team of pest controllers has come to take on the unwelcome visitors. But to avoid harming the other living creatures in the biome, they're forced to restrict their spraying to the paths and other hard surfaces.
I know you say there's less numbers on the path, but when we're working in the beds, it's still heaving.
Still the same numbers there.
So it's hard to think, well, the population really has gone down. But I think they've just sussed it, that they don't walk on the path. Oh, because, I wouldn't put it past them.
Next morning, Dina comes to see if her pessimism is justified.
Yeah, we're hunting for dead bodies this morning, hoping for a nice collection of dead bodies, but it's thin on the ground, isn't it? So you hear that lovely popping noise? When you drive over a dead cockroach and it goes bing. It's lovely, isn't it?
Certainly there's evidence all around of the damage that cockroaches can cause, but is there any evidence that the spraying has been effective?
Prime roach hotel, isn't it, really? And they were, when we looked inside last night, it was just crawling with them. But again, there's relatively few dead bodies here, aren't there? It's so frustrating, isn't it? Why are there not at least a good 2 inches? Of course, the obvious answer is to bring in biological control. Birds, frogs. We've seen robins, the renegade robins who come in and are living around here. I've watched them go for mostly young cockroaches, but often big ones. So robins, of course, that's, you know, robins don't fit in here, but there will be other kinds of birds.
Robins seem to consider that all of Eden is home territory.
Robins have done very well, but that's the friend of the gardener, so you'd expect that. But other birds as well have come into the site. I'm always amazed how quickly wildlife comes in, you know, whether it's the soil fauna or even the bigger animals. They just seem to come from nowhere and establish themselves in the site. It's incredible.
Have you noticed all the flocks of birds that's been coming out? If you actually look at it, you can see all the husks of the seed, where they've been feeding on the seed.
Yes.
You see? I must admit, they are a menace when we're actually trying to establish the germinating crops. It can be really, really troublesome. Basically, just eating the seed as we sow it, they're picking it up and picking it back out of the ground again, so it can be a bit of a problem.
Kevin may be ambivalent about the birds, but about badgers, he has no doubts at all. He hates the damage they do.
Keeping them off the crops was a nightmare. You know, the worst times were obviously when everything's first germinating and that, and all the newly tilled soil, they're just rooting through it with the freshly dug soil, looking for worms and slugs and that, and doing a lot of damage. We've used different deterrents, but there's one that I would like to use, but apparently health and safety won't agree with it, and that's an electric fence around some of the exhibits. But I think some of the public, especially the children, might get zapped, so we better not do that.
It's early January, the quietest moment in the Eden year. There's an ancient folk tradition in the West Country which says that robins represent the spirits of the apple orchard. Just in case it's true, Darren and his team are holding a winter ritual, a wassail, in which the robins will get fed and the spirits will be honoured. Apparently, some people believe that if a wassail ceremony is conducted well, next season's crop will be abundant.
Yeah, completely up for it. I mean, if you can get the spirits on your side, any opportunity, then yeah, I'll have a bit of that, and that's an excuse to have a bonfire, and of course a glass of cider. So yeah, any, you know, all three good things really.
It was gardener Julie Kendall's idea to hold the wassail, and she seems to have a pretty good grasp of the way to do things.
I'm pouring hot cider onto toast in a bag, and I'm going to shake it about. Well, we put this up into the crooks of the trees.
So the robins will have bread to eat, and the trees get a good soaking of cider around their roots.
Every twig, apples big. Every bough, apples and now. Hats full, caps full, 5 bushels, sacks full, and a little heap under the stairs. Hello, boys! Hello! And blow the horn!
Yes, well, Julia, Darren and the others will have to wait for blossom time to see whether all this merriment has any beneficial effect on the apple trees. The rest of the country may be freezing and digging itself out of snowdrifts, but Cornish winters tend to be short and not too sharp. The first hints of bulb mania are starting to emerge. But they're not the only plants to come out into the cold. One bright winter's morning, prize examples from the Dry Tropics collection are on the move. This is the closest these plants will get for the foreseeable future to a biome of their own. For a couple of months, they'll be under the care and protection of Glenn Leishman, the supervisor in the temperate biome.
These are strangers indeed. They've never been in here before. In fact, I don't think these have been out of the nursery, some of these plants, because they've been growing quite steadily in the nursery over the last few years. So we thought at this point it might be nice to actually show some of these plants to the public that we have been growing. And some of them are quite interesting to look at, as you can see. Spiny creatures, tough old plants, and it'll be interesting to see what the public make of them. They're quite dangerous plants as well, and they're quite close to the public, so we're going to have to put lots of signage around them, just to say, you know, please don't touch, which probably means they will.
The plants will spend the rest of the winter here as a hint to the public of what might come if only the funds can be found. Who knows? Perhaps a rich benefactor might pass by one winter's day. But this move may be at some cost to the plants themselves.
I think you've got to be honest and say those plants will suffer. You know, they're going to sit in their pots, you know, through, what, the next 3 months. You know, it gets relatively cold in here for plants like this, you know, down to 8 to 10 degrees. We keep it in here during the nighttime period. So to get leaf drop on some of the other plants, these plants would like to have a bit more heat and a drier environment than we're going to give them.
And sure enough, it doesn't take long for some of the dry tropic plants to react to their unfamiliar environment. The baobab, a native of Africa, shows its distress most dramatically. But other plants thrive in the slightly chilly air of a Mediterranean winter. Cherry, peach and apricot bear blossom, while the citrus bear fruit. Even early in the new year, the temperate biome is filled with colour and fragrance and the promise of spring. And by February, there are signs of spring outside. Only 800,000 more bulbs to go. In many ways, the daffodil is the flower of Cornwall. The first phase of bulb mania is a reminder of the fields of commercially produced blooms that are still scattered through the county. No surprise, then, that narcissi and daffodils feature strongly in Kevin Austin's Cornish crops display, sharing the beds with brassicas and the audaciously coloured anemones.
We're halfway through February now, and you've got this colour from the daffodils, and you've also got the strong green from the brassicas. And they're, you know, some of the main crops that are dominant in the Cornish environment. And I'm pleased with it. I'm very pleased with how things are.
But what's this? Planting potatoes in among the daffs? Kevin only has 2 acres to play with in the Cornish crops area, so he's always keen to try out double cropping.
Did a little bit of a juggling act, but we're trying to get as many crops as we can in this small area.
Kevin isn't certain that this particular juggling act is going to work.
But we're interplanting with the daffodils, so let's hope we don't get an adverse reaction. Well, there are just certain crops don't like being alongside others, and it'll be interesting to see. I'm not quite sure about this. Bit of an experiment. If it doesn't work, then we'll try again.
Gardening is always a win-some, lose-some kind of game. Warm soil in winter isn't only good news for early growing, it's good news for pests as well. So, under the protective gaze of Eden's biggest bee, Jill is preparing the ground for the perennial battle with slugs and snails, using the organic approach that she and Kevin prefer.
It's quite early in the year, but there's getting quite a lot of problem with small grey slugs already, and Jill's putting on a biocontrol of slugs, for slugs there, called nemoslug at the moment. It's a nematode, a native nematode that actually feeds on slugs. It's got a very pointed proboscis, and in the soil it can actually physically swim up to a slug, puncture the side wall of a slug, swim into its body and actually start feeding on it. It all sounds pretty gruesome, but they're our little friends.
But some slugs are obviously well ahead of the nematodes. and other intruders have already been at the emerging tulips. Is it the badgers or is it rats? As spring advances, the whole site seems to be getting brighter, outside and in. David Craddock puts together the Kaleidoscope exhibit that he's designed with Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen.
What's changed is this has always been, was always established as the footprint. What we've added is other cells around the side, with the five colour routes in to the centre. What are those?
The change in the design means there's twice the building work to do, but there's no extra time.
And here we are, 2 days away. Well, there's 48 hours. We've still got a long way to go. We're all fairly passionate about what we do, and I think if we're absolutely honest, we're probably sometimes over-ambitious in what we can achieve in the time. I think from the conversations that Lawrence and I have had, I think he'll be very pleased with what we've done, and now I think he'll love it.
In April, when the tulips fully reveal themselves, bulb mania makes its maximum impact, justifying all those weeks of planting. The display is inspired by the great spring festivals of Holland, especially the one at Keukenhof, where 70 acres are planted with a mind-boggling 7 million tulips. Eden's 35 acres of outdoor garden can absorb 1 million bulbs all too easily. So the curator, Tom Key, and his designer colleagues introduce blocks of flags to add more zest to the landscape. But Tom doesn't see this as competition with the Dutch.
It's not a numbers game for me, it's about how you use those bulbs. It's about saying spring is here for me, and it's saying get off your couch, winter's over, come and visit Eden, and it's about appreciating colour.
For those visitors who may not be totally consumed by the idea of seeing 1 million bulbs in bloom, there are other ways of immersing themselves in colour. This isn't some sophisticated form of childminding, but a chance for Mum, Dad and the kids to have fun together. Creative play for all the family. Inside David and Lawrence's tent, visitors are encouraged to lose themselves even more completely in a kaleidoscopic hall of mirrors. The design seems to be working. The public are guided through the colour zones by top-hatted members of the performance team. Twice a day, the Eden performers add their spectacular touch to the river of grape hyacinths on the roof of the Link building. Not that the river really needs an extra touch. Fiona's experiment has proved to be a fabulous success. But Fiona never got to see the results for herself. During the weeks that the River of Flowers was in full flood, she was thousands of miles away, working on a conservation project in Costa Rica.
I've seen photographs and I've heard sort of eyewitness accounts, but I wasn't here, unfortunately. So we only get one chance to go and spend 5 weeks in Costa Rica. So I think it worked really well, to be honest. It was an experiment. We weren't quite sure. I think I said when we were doing it that we weren't quite sure what the results were going to be. But it was a beautiful ribbon of blue across the roof this spring.
At least by being away, Fiona missed the builders on the roof. By an unfortunate clash of schedules, when the river was at its best, construction workers were laying the foundations for a new canopy over the outdoor restaurant.
I knew the canopy was going to happen. I hoped that it was sort of finished and out the way by now, and it's a real shame. But it's one of the things working at Eden, you can't complain about the building work that's going on, because it's part of the project. It's an ongoing project. This is happening all the time.
Last autumn, Julie and the rest of the Green team had the unforgiving job of planting 200,000 tulip bulbs. Now, in late spring, they have 200,000 tulip bulbs to take out, to make way for the summer bedding. But they've discovered something alarming about these tulips. They're blighted by a disease called tulip fire, so Tom and Darren face a serious dilemma.
I'm just surprised how quickly it's
built up, yeah.
It's built up. I mean, this is only had in tulips last year.
Yeah.
It's sort of disfigured and distorted the growth, and it obviously makes the bulb displays, it lessens their impact. They look a little bit more diseased. And that's obviously happened where tulips are continually grown on the same area. So we've got to obviously come up with solutions.
How do the Dutch deal with it then? Because they obviously have the same issues.
Yeah, I mean, they rotate. You know, they'll take out a field out of production for 7 years, and we'll rotate. They rotate the types of bulb.
Right.
They have the same issues.
Unlike the Dutch, the Eden gardeners don't have 70 acres to devote to one big annual event. The beds at Eden have to be filled with interest all the year round, so replacing the soil looks like an unrealistic option. Somehow, they'll have to come up with a solution by next autumn. But at least the tulips in the temperate biome continue to put on a great show. There's no tulip fire in here, nor threat from slugs, and no danger of rain beating the flowers down. This bed delivers its impact well into May. But for Glenn, this is just the beginning.
I'm pleased with the results that we've got. We've been looking at all the different cultivars that we planted to see which ones do best. And we've made little notes of that. And we're going to get the best tulips from last year, the best tulips that we planted this year, and marry them together for the display next year, plus a few new ones again. And then we should just keep improving year upon year.
To bring this season of bursting new growth to a triumphant climax, Eden bids welcome to what's said to be the largest flower in the world. Amorphophallus titanum, the Titan arum, is more than 2 meters of magnificence. In the rainforests of Sumatra, where these giants come from, they only flower and fertilize once in 7 years. Now, well-established botanical gardens around the world may have achieved this before. In fact, there's a specimen at Kew that looks as if it may be ready to flower in a few days' time. But this is a first for Eden. If this magnificent specimen is to reproduce itself, Dina and Tim from the nursery have to move quickly. The flower will only be responsive to fertilization for a few hours.
We're pollinating on the first night of opening the female flowers, and tomorrow night we'll come back and collect the pollen. Why it has to be done in the middle of the night, I really don't know. We're going by the recommendation of Fairchild and Cambridge, and apparently 1:30 was the time, so we're doing well because it's 2 o'clock. I guess it's the magic hour in the middle of the forest. Oh, that cockroach. Oh, Tim.
Is he eating it?
Oh, what's he doing?
He's eating it.
Maybe there's a chance that it'll help pollinate if it moves it around. Maybe we should just put the pollen on the cockroach.
Let it do the job
Let
first.
him do the job.
Up at the orchard, at this season when everything is bursting into life, it looks as though the wassail ceremony has had just the right effect. Unless a rare late frost nips them in the bud, the young apple trees will be doing well this year. Julie and Darren have a lot to look forward to.
There's nothing better to start to see plants on the move again, to start to grow again, and things popping up and coming into flower. And I mean, this is what it's all about, isn't it? Very busy time, but an exciting time.
Back in the tropic biome, the Titan may look shriveled and shrunken, but it appears that Dina and Tim's nocturnal operation has borne fruit.
Oh, that is incredible. That's done. It worked! It worked! Yay! We have fruit! And looks like, oh, there's even a dead cockroach in there. Yeah, it looks like the cockroaches helped actually, didn't they? Fantastic. Yeah, you did it, Tim.
Sadly, though, it's not to be. After a couple more days, it's realised that the Amorphophallus has failed to deliver, and everything had looked so good. But the experts had warned that this might happen.
It's going back home. The same thing has happened to cues. They tell us, you know, it looks good, and then it just starts to rot.
Not even the ebullient Dina can hide her disappointment.
Well, I suppose you get a little hardened to things die, things don't work. But yeah, we're really disappointed because we put a lot of effort into it.
And yet, in horticulture, especially horticulture at Eden, nothing ever stands still.
Well, but Tim just tells me this morning he thinks he's got another one on the go. Oh, it looks like a flower bud.
That's the Eden way, always positive and always changing. And there's probably no more impressive example of dramatic change than what's happened to this Cornish china clay pit in only a handful of years. High summer, at the start of year 5 of the Eden project. Once more, the site is filling up. The sun and the rain clouds are engaged in their merry dance. The gardens are reaching their best. The central bed in the warm, temperate display that only a few weeks ago carried tulips is now brightly filled with flowers for cutting. Outside, the summer annuals are again demanding the public's attention. And as you look down on this ever-changing landscape, you can't help wondering what it might be like in 20 years' time when it's had a chance to really mature.
You'll have whacking great timber trees. You won't be able to see out at all. It'll just be a rainforest in captivity here. And you'll walk straight into the Mediterranean in the next biome. And our outside landscape, the structure planting, the structure hedges and everything, they'll be at full height. It'll be fantastic. And what's going to be great about it is that then, only then will it truly have romance. Part of Eden's problem at the moment is it's a bit like a stripper. It's bare when you look down, you've got the whole thing spread out.
And as far as Tim Smith is concerned, the Eden message that we should value plants and go with the grain of nature will still capture our imagination.
We still need to eat, we still need to drink, we still need shelter, we still need medicine, we still need things to make the bites go away. We need spiritual succor from feeling at one with the environment. If anything, the meaning inherent in what we see here will grow stronger over the next 20 years, not weaker.